right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Talk It Out Tuesday. I want to thank the team over at the ABC Commission um, that support us as ambassadors for the Talk It Out NC campaign. My name is Kurtis Taylor, and I am a person in long-term recovery. And what that means for me is that I have not used alcohol or any other substance since December 23rd, 2002. So that means in just a few more days, I'll be celebrating 20 years since God delivered me from substance use disorder, and my life has been changed forever. Um, I currently serve as the executive director of the Alcohol Drug Council of North Carolina. And as well as that, I serve a role as an ambassador for the Talk It Out campaign. I'm just simply one of many ambassadors, and I'm honored and privileged to be one. And so today I just want to talk a little bit about my recovery journey and how that relates to why it is so important for me to be a participant in the prevention of underage drinking and to help young people find their pathway, to help young people avoid the pitfalls, the many pitfalls that can come from things like peer pressure and identity crisis and so on and so forth, things that I experienced at a very young age. And hopefully my recovery story will help inspire others, especially young folks, to not fall victim to some of the same things that I did. So as a child, I was labeled early on as academically gifted in elementary school. And as a result of that, I was shipped off to different schools. I was placed in different classes outside of my group of peers or friends and the people who I thought that I wanted to fit in with, the cool crowd, if you will. And because of that, I basically began to kind of hate myself. I hated that aspect of myself, that I was different than. I had feelings of inadequacy. I was picked on for displaying this academic gift. And as a result, I really and truly hated that part of myself. Eventually, it became a situation where I wanted desperately to be anyone other than who I was. And so eventually, I found athletics. I started playing football. I fell in love with football. I was gifted athletically, and I finally found a place of belonging. I was a part of a team. I was accepted on that team. Even more than that, I was admired and respected as a football player. To this day, I still love the smell of fresh cut grass. It takes me all the way back to football practice, and I have extremely fond memories of those times. Um, but after a few years, I hurt my knee and unfortunately was not able to be cleared to play football ever again, any team sport for that matter. The doctor just simply would not allow it. And so there I was again, faced with that identity crisis with nowhere to fit in and nowhere to belong. Um, at the very early age of 12 years old, I was introduced to my first substance, which was alcohol. And from that very first experience, I drank at an alcoholic level. I have no experience with like social drinking or simply drinking on the weekends or only at a party. I drank alone. I drank for the sole purpose of changing my identity, of taking away those feelings of inadequacy. I didn't realize it at the time, but what alcohol was doing really, it was taking away all of my inhibitions. Um, and one of the unfortunate aspects of it, it was taking away what we old timers call common sense. I began to make decisions under the influence of alcohol that any person, even a young person in their right mind, would never ever choose. Um, and so I began getting in trouble. I began, skipping school. I was getting in trouble with the law at an early age, and I began to do things to the extreme, all in an effort to just simply fit in. I just wanted so desperately to be part of the crowd and to be accepted and revered by who I considered my peers, and again, the people who I thought that I wanted to fit in with. Fast forward from alcohol led to marijuana. Marijuana at 15 years of age led to cocaine. Freebasing is what it was called back then. And again, just like my very first experience with alcohol led to, um, the very extreme use of that particular substance, every single substance after that had a similar effect. Um, and when cocaine was introduced to my situation, it very quickly became, let's just call it hell on earth. It was not a party. It was not a good time. I was not using because it felt so great. I was using because in my mind and in my spirit, in my soul, if you will, I felt that I had to. I felt that I had absolutely no choice. I was hopelessly and helplessly addicted to these substances. I want to talk real quick about what was taking place in my brain. Again, I was a young person. I had no clue about the science behind the disease of addiction and substance use disorder, or any mental health issues, if you will. But since then, I've become educated somewhat on what was actually going on. And so, what I've learned is that each and every human being is born equipped with a survival instinct. We are each and every one of us born already equipped with what's called a reward and control pathway. And this system is in place to make sure that we're ready at all times to fight for our survival, to do things and form particular habits that ensure that not only us as individuals, but that the entire human race continues and even flourishes and survives through difficulties. So I'll give you an example. Um, it's 4th of July weekend, right? It's 102 degrees, and you're at the family cookout in the backyard, and smoke's coming from the grill, and everybody's out and kind of enjoying the sunshine for the day, and you begin to get thirsty. Your throat is parched, and so you go over to the cooler there in the backyard, close to the grill, and you grab an ice cold Pepsi Cola. We're in North Carolina, so I know everybody here drinks Pepsi. You grab that ice cold Pepsi Cola, you pop that can open. I know each and every one of us in this moment can hear the sound of that can opening, right? And you put the can up to your lips, and that soda begins to go down your throat, and it just feels, oh, so very good. And what's taking place chemically in the brain is that a certain amount of endorphins are being released in that moment. Dopamine, especially, is being released in your brain as a chemical in that moment. And the purpose of this particular endorphin is to make you feel good so that you have an extremely fond memory of this particular act. Because guess what? If one of us doesn't drink for a certain period of time, the end result will ultimately be death. You can't go too long without drinking something. Your body will become dehydrated, and unfortunately, you will die. And so this system is set in place, this chemical reaction, if you will, to remind us to repeat this particular behavior over and over again, and to make it feel so good that you don't want to wait too long. You don't want to put too much distance in between experiencing this same effect again and again. So now you're hungry, right? And the burgers are coming off the grill, and you're watching that cheese melt across that patty, and you got it hooked up just the way you want it. For me, that would be lettuce and tomato, maybe a little ketchup. And you take that first bite of that burger on that 4th of July cookout, and that grease from that burger is running down your chin. Well, guess what? There again, a small amount of dopamine is being released in your system to remind you to repeat this act. Because just like drinking, if we don't eat something ever so often, as a human being, we will, of course, die, right? And so, again, for drinking, maybe there was this much dopamine. For eating, maybe a little more dopamine, depending on which one our body places the most importance upon. And then, of course, there's procreation, if you will, right? And so this act, if drinking and eating releases this much dopamine, then the act of procreation releases, let's say, double that, maybe even triple that amount. Reason being because without procreation, not just you and I as individuals would pass away, but the entire human race eventually would be wiped off the face of the earth. So this is of the utmost importance. So this amount of dopamine means that this is even more pleasurable than the eating and drinking aspect, sleeping, if you will. But as you go down the list of things that we each need each and every day for survival, you get the picture. So this is what this system is set in place for. There's another aspect of this system that we refer to as satiation. So there's a satiation switch, meaning that I've drank enough, I've eaten enough, I've had enough sleep, I'm satiated. And so that desire, that craving, if you will now be placed on pause until it's time for the next event. I want to ask a question. This is rhetorical. But how many of us can decide in this moment, right here, right now, that, you know what? I'm just going to stop breathing. I don't feel like breathing anymore. I'm going to force my body to not breathe another moment and go. Answer, of course, is none of us, right? Because eventually that same reward control pathway is directly connected to our survival system, that primitive part of our brain, and it's going to overpower what we would normally call willpower, and it's going to say, it's going to force you to breathe. Now, we would never consider ourselves weak. We would never consider ourselves morally defective because we don't have the quote unquote willpower to force ourselves to stop breathing. And the fact that we can never overcome that with just sheer willpower and force our bodies in and of our own selves to just simply stop breathing, we shouldn't be ashamed of that fact, right? Well, this is the exact same system that these substances take over, hijack, if you will. They take over this reward control pathway. So if eating that burger and drinking that Pepsi release this amount of dopamine, if procreation released that amount, then these substances, when for example, when cocaine was introduced to my system, every single ounce, every single morsel of dopamine within my brain, that chemical was released all of a sudden, all at once. And after repeating that just a few times, now all of a sudden, my reward control pathway is placing all of its emphasis on repeating this particular act. So now getting and using these particular substances become more important than eating. It became more important than drinking, sleeping, procreation. Any other survival aspect of the human life became inferior to the importance of getting and using these substances. And so I say that to say this. I was not weak because I did not possess the willpower to stop. I was not morally defective because I continued to use despite the negative consequences in my life. In fact, I was suffering from a disease. I was impacted and challenged by what we call substance use disorder. I'm hoping that explanation has helped someone to kind of make sense out of an issue that to the rational human, the human mind and our perspective makes entirely no sense whatsoever, because the actions and the choices that I was making on a daily basis actually had no logic to it. Logic was out of the window, and the situations that I placed myself in, the choices that I made, the behaviors that I exhibited, placing my life basically in danger 24 hours a day. As a result of my substance use disorder, I faced homelessness, I faced incarceration, I faced underachievement on a whole new level, especially when you consider the potential that I in particular had. But I would say any individual for that matter, once challenged with this particular issue of substance use disorder, all of their potential is pretty much going to waste in that moment. And so I'll fast forward to what we call recovery. And where my recovery journey first began was in 1996. I found and embraced long-term recovery. I checked myself into a treatment center. I went to inpatient treatment. From inpatient treatment, I was accepted into a recovery home called Oxford House. And I fell in love with the Oxford House concept. I got heavily involved. I was passionate about it. I began to help out with issues within my own house. I helped out with issues in other Oxford houses. Eventually, I went on to help to open new Oxford houses. I was elected by my peer group to serve in every single capacity of leadership that exists in the Oxford House program. And, and I had finally found a sense of belonging, if you will. I belonged in recovery. I belonged with this particular peer group, and I was respected and embraced by this. And it became my new family. Roughly 4 years later, I made the decision to get married, and I moved out of Oxford House. And these you would think would be a good decision. However, what quickly became what took place in my life is that I was kind of alienated and taken away from my particular recovery program. And next thing I knew, I suffered a return to use. And this return to use, it did not last very long. I would say roughly 10 days to 2 weeks at most, but it was horrific. So much damage was done in this very short amount of time that I can't even begin to describe it to you. But let's just say it was devastating. And I will never forget the level of shame and the level of guilt that I experienced in that moment, as I had to crawl back into a recovery meeting and pick up a white key tag and explain to everyone that after all these years of success, all these years of sustained recovery, that there once again, like a dog, I had returned to my own vomit. But nobody really was judging me in that moment, nowhere near as harshly as I judged myself. Part of that is a result of the stigma that society just simply places on substance use disorder in and of itself. But then there's an additional stigma because I felt like I had found a way out. By God's grace, I had been given a pathway to a different life. And lo and behold, there I was again, returning to the same devastating actions and behaviors that had gotten me homeless, that had gotten me incarcerated, and so on and so forth. I put together another significant amount of clean time, but in my core, I was shaken. It was very, very difficult to escape that guilt and that shame. And a little while later, I suffered another return to use. Again, it didn't last very long, but again, it was extremely devastating. My final return to use occurred on June the 1st, 2002. I had, my son was born on February 25th, 2002. And I was the sole provider for my household financially. And I had also lost my job in February of 2002. And I had no idea how I was going to provide for my family. Nobody really was hiring all across the country because 9/11 had just taken place the year prior. And there was basically a hiring freeze. And it was a very desperate moment in my life. And I made a terrible decision on June the 1st, 2002 to, place my future in my own hands, to place the survival and the provision for my family in my own hands. And, I guess I was going by that old cliche that a man's got to do what a man's got to do. Let me tell you right here, right now, that is a lie. That's a bald-faced lie. A man doesn't have to do anything but just trust God. Unfortunately, in that moment, I was dependent and trusting on myself. And I made the decision to go back into those streets and attempt to be basically a dealer in that moment. My career as a dealer lasted just a few hours. Later that evening, I had a return to use. And if those two first brief returns to use were devastating, this was catastrophic. This was absolutely catastrophic. I was so ashamed. I was so guilty that I could just barely even live with myself. And this particular circumstance lasted for an entire solid, basically 6 months of my life. 6 months of pure, unfiltered hell. Because here I was. I had been introduced, first, I had been homeless. I had been unemployable. I had been derelict. I had disappointed myself. I had disappointed family members. I I had basically just gotten to the lowest point of my life, and then been introduced to recovery and a beautiful recovery process, and gotten good jobs and so on and so forth, and experienced success. Even had been sponsoring other people and helped them on their recovery journey. But there I was, back in those streets. I lost my home. I lost my job. I lost my family. I lost my mind. I lost dignity. I lost the just basic respect for myself as a human being. And I felt that I was worthless. I felt that there was no hope for me whatsoever. I managed to even commit things, illegal things against the law. I had pending arrest warrants hanging over my head. And on December 23rd, 2002, I was at the end of myself. And thankfully, I knew what name to call on in that moment. And when I called out and reached and asked God for help, what resounded within my spirit in that moment was, well, you know what? You can't really do anything to begin to get your life together until you take care of these charges that are hanging over your head. And my normal response to something like that would have been, well, what do you mean? You want me to turn myself in? We don't turn ourselves in. You got to find me. You got to do your job. That's what you get paid to do. And that's how I know in that moment, it was pure surrender. Because instead, my response was, I went straight to a payphone. Yeah, there were still payphones on the street back in 2002. I went to a payphone and I picked it up and I dialed 911. And I said, hello, my name is Kurtis Taylor. I have a felony warrant for my arrest. I'd like to turn myself in. Could you send someone to get me? And the dispatcher asked me, where I was located. I know that they could look in the system and saw that I was telling the truth, that I did indeed have a warrant for my arrest. But the response came back, well, you've reached the sheriff's office. And right now you're in the town limits of the town of Garner, and which is outside of our jurisdiction. So what you're going to need to do is hang up and call back and ask to speak with the town of Garner Police Department, and hopefully they can get you taken care of. And I remember looking at the phone, is he serious? Really nobody wants to just come and get me in this moment. And so I said, okay. So I hung up and I dialed the phone again, and I got in contact with the town of Garner Police Department. And again, he's asking where I am. And I explained to him where I was, and he said, well, I don't have a unit in the vicinity right now. But if you give me, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, somebody gets free, we'll send somebody over to help you out. And I'm looking at the phone in amazement, in disbelief, this cannot be happening. I've literally got not one, but two felony warrants for my arrest right then. And I know good and well that even if a mall security guard was to stop me and do a code 4 check on me, that I would be taken away. But instead, I'm attempting to turn myself in, and it's not happening. It's as if the universe is conspiring. And what I discovered in that moment is that my enemy did not want me to turn myself in that moment. You can give that whatever name you want to. But the reality was that the disease of substance use disorder, it comes to kill and steal and destroy. That's its job. It wants to annihilate and eliminate any potential whatsoever. It wanted to disrupt and disregard the plan that God had for my life. And so by this becoming clear to me, the situation became laughable. I said, you know what? Okay, that's cool. I'm going to go to jail today, period. Right? Now that's a very different mission than I've ever been on in my life. But this was real. This was real in that moment because there was nobody out there with me. There was no sponsor. There was no pastor. Mama couldn't help me in that moment. There was just me and God. And I asked God for help. He told me what to do. And my simple act of obedience was just simply trusting him with the results. Do what he said to do in that moment and just trust him with the results. That's all that I could do. And so it took a few hours that morning, but eventually actually it ended up being some sheriffs that came to get me. And I went on to jail that morning. And because of the charges that I had, I actually ended up needing to go to the Department of Corrections for the first time in my life. I had managed to avoid prison for all those years, in and out of jail constantly, but never had made it to the point of prison. But there I was. But what I need to say is that jail didn't save me. Prison didn't save me. My life was changed in the moment that I called out on God and surrendered to his will for my life. My life was changed instantly in that moment. Since that day, since December 23rd, 2002, not for 1 second or for any day, not for one moment of my life since then, have I had a craving, have I had a dream, have I had any kind of inkling or desire for any substance whatsoever. I didn't realize it at the time, but he had taken even the taste of cigarettes right out of my mouth. I know how addictive that nicotine is. I had tried to stop smoking cigarettes in my past, even in recovery, without success. And so I know what was being done for me, and I know who delivered me. Again, this is my story. We all have our own recovery journey and our own recovery pathway. This morning is my particular story, and I have no choice but to share it with you and just simply tell you the truth. So I came home from prison in May of 2004 without a change of clothes, with nowhere to go. I thought I was going to Wilmington Street Shelter. And if I was going with a heart that said, thank you, Jesus, for a shelter for me to go to. Because I understood that the world didn't owe me anything, that nobody really owed me their forgiveness or their trust, because I understood that my track record, what I had shown people, really displayed the exact opposite of that. I showed that I couldn't be trusted. I showed that eventually I was going to screw things up, right? But God had a different plan for my life. One of my dear friends from Oxford House organization, she and her wife picked me up from the prison that day and explained that they had been thinking about me and praying over me and decided I was going to live with them for a few days. They put clothes on my back and gave me food to eat. Most importantly, they gave me love, unconditional love, without judgment. And they allowed me a few days to kind of get myself reacclimated to society. Because whether you realize it or not, incarceration in and of itself is a very, very traumatic experience. For a man, it just simply, it takes away any and all dignity that you have left. It is absolutely one of the most humiliating experiences that you could ever experience in your life. To be caged like an animal, to be strip searched, to be forced to swing a bush act for 10, 12 hours a day and get paid 70 cents. I take that back. You get paid $1 a day, but they're going to take 30 cents of that away from you to pay for that little nasty bag of food that they give you, if you can call it food, right? To have to stand on a line waiting to get pairs of underwear that some other man has been wearing the week before and the week before that. It is a very, very humiliating experience and traumatizing. And, you know, we need to understand that, you know, coming home from that is not easy. And getting used to the busyness of life again is not easy for a lot of people. And so I'm extremely grateful for my dear friends for accepting me into their home and, you know, believing in me and just, you know, giving me a chance. I went from their home into an Oxford House experience. And from there, we talked about the experience that I just taken place where I was coming home from incarceration and I had no ability, right? No pathway to make any plans for myself upon my release. And we talked about how the fact of the matter is that there are thousands upon thousands of people in a very similar situation who have nobody on the outside to navigate any type of a system, to put a plan in place to help reduce the likelihood that they will suffer a return to incarceration. And we created a program. We created a job, really, out of thin air. I was the very first reentry coordinator for Oxford House here in the state of North Carolina. And I went on to help place men and women all over the state, all 100 counties in North Carolina, from all the prisons. We got a lot of prisons in this state. And I helped them get placed directly from their release date from incarceration directly into an Oxford House. so that at least they had a fighting chance to have a successful reentry to society and reduce the likelihood that they would ever return to incarceration. I also became an outreach coordinator for Oxford House in that time, and I was a participant in helping to open over like 40 some odd Oxford houses. Um, uh, so, you know, instead of going from like coming out of prison homeless, I became like useful, not just with a job, but with a purpose and a passion. And I developed a huge excitement for giving back and being of service to others. Um, I was able to go back to school, and that gift that God had given me early in life that I considered a curse for so many years, I was able to put it to use and glorify God by graduating from Shaw University with my bachelor's in social work with a 4.0 GPA. I graduated summa cum laude, and I did so not with not being braggadocious, but simply by acknowledging and recognizing what God can do with inside an individual when you just simply surrender to Him. And all I was doing was putting to use the gifts that He put inside of me. I went on to accept the role of executive director of the Alcohol Drug Council of North Carolina. And let me just say that my life has not been the same since December 23rd, 2002. I could not have sat down and put some of the events in my life on paper because I really simply could not have imagined a life so beautiful, so meaningful. I'm blessed every moment of every single day. This past June of this year, on June the 18th, I married the love of my life, my new wife. Her name is Karen, and she's beautiful, and she's loving, and she's caring, but most importantly, she loves God. She loves God just as much as I love God. And, that in and of itself is one of the most important blessings that I get to enjoy and be a part of each and every day. In my role as executive director of Alcohol Drug Council, I was contacted to become an ambassador for the Talk It Out campaign. And the Talk It Out campaign is focused directly for the prevention of underage drinking. And the sad reality is that most young people experience alcohol for the first time at the young age of 14. I was actually 12 years old. And what we've come to understand is that young brain is not fully grown yet. The brain really is not fully grown until like 24, 25, even 26 years of age. And so that young brain is very susceptible. It's very vulnerable to the dangers and the harmful effects of alcohol. It's not ready to protect itself against the devastating effects that alcohol has. Alcohol affects each and every single organ in the human body negatively. And so the earlier that a young person experiences their first use, the more likely they are to develop a substance use disorder. And that's one of the reasons why I find it extremely important to be an ambassador for the Talk It Out campaign and to do everything within my power to help prevent each and every young person within the sound of my voice to just, even if you do decide to experience alcohol, at least put it off. Wait until you're 21 years of age. That's the legal age. At least your brain will be a little bit older and hopefully better equipped to protect you from those harmful effects and make you less likely to experience substance use disorder the way that I did. Trust me, if you can avoid it, that's what you want to do. There is no glamour in substance use disorder. There is no future in it. There's nothing exciting about it. In fact, it is indeed one of the most devastating experiences in my history. And so that's why I'm so proud to be a part of this team. Again, I'm just one of many, many ambassadors across the state of North Carolina. Each and every one of us is here and available to come and speak at your school, at your church group, at your Rotary Club, anywhere, anywhere, anytime. We will come and answer questions and give presentations. And we don't use scare tactics because we understand that those don't work anyway. Young people don't necessarily look at danger in the same way that an adult looks at it. For the most part, young people feel invincible. So a scare tactic won't work anyway. So what we're here to do each and every day is just simply provide you with accurate information. We want to educate you on the harmful impacts and the things that can take place as a result of experiencing alcohol or any other substance for that matter too early in life, and equip you with that education so that then you can go about life making healthy choices and healthy decisions for yourself. That's all it's about. Again, this morning I shared with you my story. I want to say that I personally embrace and respect all pathways to recovery: medication assisted, faith-based, 12-step, smart recovery. If you need to climb up on the roof every morning at 7 a.m. and holler at the top of your lungs to help you stay clean one day at a time, then I'm going to be right there on the ground holding that ladder steady so you can make that climb. That's what this is about. Not one of us is any better than or any less than another person. I have a wholehearted understanding of that fact. And so instead of judging one another, instead of perpetuating stigma, we need to show compassion to one another. We need to advocate for a system of care in our state that gives people access to effective and evidence-based care and treatment services and recovery support services. We need to create a society that where instead of judgment, people challenged with mental health and substance use disorders are embraced with compassion and love and understanding, and most of all, help. People should be given the help that they so desperately need to overcome the stigma and the barriers attached to substance use disorder and other behavioral health issues. And that's what I'm about. That's what my life is dedicated to, period. So I hope what I had to share this morning was helpful to someone in some way. I hope that God was glorified in this moment, because that's all my life is about right now, is just simply pointing people to him, because that's where my help comes from. Again, I'm grateful to be a part of this team, and I'm open to any questions at this time. I think Heather is monitoring any questions in the chat or online. Thank you.
Hey, Kurtis. So I've got a question from Berna, and she asked if you could share what was your turning point.
Oh goodness, my turning point ultimately was pain. I absolutely could not take it any longer, and not physical pain, but spiritual and emotional pain. And again, it was 3, 4 o'clock in the morning on December 23rd, 2002. And I had a decision to make. I was either going to figure out a way to end my life in a very negative manner, or by God's grace and mercy, I was going to call out and ask for God's help in that moment. Fortunately for me, I chose to reach out and ask for God's help. But that ultimately was my turning point. I was freezing cold. I was hungry. I couldn't experience any type of euphoria whatsoever from any substance, not alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, nothing. Nothing was working. And yet there I was, like a rat in a maze, repeating the same behaviors over and over and over again, because I felt like I had no way out. And so, the phrase that I've come to use for it is that I came to the end of myself, if you will. There was nowhere else for me to go. So things simply had to change in that moment, and that was my turning point. It was God who did it for me.
Awesome. So I've got a few comments. So Karen, she stated, thank you for continuing to share your story and being honest and humble. I'm so proud of you for your journey and your success, and how your failures made you call your higher power to save you then and now.
Thank you.
And I've also got a comment from Jan. Kurtis, thank you so much for sharing your painful past and understanding of your disease. I'm so sorry you suffered. I'm thankful that you've healed from your disease. Bravo, you're an inspiration.
Thank you.
Berna stated, powerful message by His grace. Let's see here. Let's see, make sure I don't want to miss anyone. So Stacy asked, what advice would you give an underage person who is struggling with alcohol and drug addiction?
That's an excellent question. Sometimes I think about was there something that somebody could have said to me way back then? And, oftentimes I draw a blank, really, to be, quite honest with you, because I was so caught up in what I refer to as an identity crisis. And I just so desperately, I cannot emphasize enough how desperate I was to just all I wanted to do was just fit in. And there was a particular crowd that I thought that I needed to and wanted to fit in with. And I would have done anything, absolutely anything back in those days to accomplish that. In hindsight, it was really ridiculous, right? It was absolutely ridiculous thinking on my part. But what I would say to a young person in this day and time is that you don't have to feel alone. Ultimately, each and every one of us, we all desire that sense of belonging somewhere. We want to feel like we belong somewhere to someone, and that we're accepted by a group, and to walk through life feeling different than, feeling less than, feeling inadequate, feeling like a castaway. It's a terrible, terrible circumstance. Emotionally, I was, oh my goodness, I can still feel it and bring up those emotions even today, almost 20 years into my recovery journey. And those feelings were real. As irrational as my thinking was, the feelings and the way that I was feeling in that moment, they were real, and they impacted my behavior and my decisions. And I would tell a young person today to find somebody that they can talk to. This is Talk It Out Tuesday. We're talking about the Talk It Out campaign. So find somebody that you can talk to. Let somebody know how you're feeling. There is help available to you. There is somebody that will understand you and that can help walk you through these emotions. It does get better. There is a way out. There's another way. You don't have to self-medicate or do things and behave in a manner outside of your character just simply to try to fit in with some crowd. If the crowd you're trying to fit in with wants you to do things that will negatively impact you, and then guess what? That's not the people you need to be around anyway, because they don't have your best interests at heart. So, find something that makes you feel like you belong. Find something positive that you can place your passion in, and find your purpose in life outside of substances.
All right, Sonia says, thank you for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And then Barbara asks, do you believe the shame, guilt, and blame keeps us in our addiction longer?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's the stigma and the shame that keeps people from wanting to admit that they need some help in the first place. Society places such an incredible stigma on it, and a lot of people pass judgment on people challenged with substance use disorder. They say that person is doing it to themselves. All they gotta do is stop. Why they keep doing it? Why can't they just quit? And so that's why at every opportunity I attempt to explain what's really happening in that addicted brain, so to speak, and the science behind addiction, so that it becomes more clear that this person is not having a party. It's not fun. It's literally hell on earth. But yes, absolutely, the stigma and shame not only drive people to stay within that substance use disorder situation longer. In this day and time, because of some of the substances being used, people actually die as a direct result of the stigma and shame, because they go that one more day without reaching for the help that they need because they're ashamed and they don't want to have to admit to somebody that they're faced with this issue, that they're having these thoughts or cravings and so forth that they can't overcome with sheer willpower. And yeah, a lot of people don't make it. That's why I tried my best to speak with passion and be a vessel, because I understand that it didn't have to turn out this way for me. I could very well be one of those statistics that didn't make it, but by God's grace and mercy, here I am. And so I'm dedicated, I'm obligated, I'm committed, to being a part of the solution, to being a part of the next man, the next woman's recovery journey. I want to be, just like that friend, that dear friend from Oxford House was there at that prison gate to help me out in my time of need. I attempt to be that person to other people each and every day of my life. I'm even dedicated to using destigmatizing language. Our word choice can either perpetuate stigma or help to one day eliminate it. And so even the words that we use can impact that stigma and what we stand for, and whether somebody feels judged in our presence or if they feel compassion and love.
Awesome. So we've got a few more. Jim says, Kurtis, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. Your life story of how God has worked in your life is powerful. I'm proud that you are an ambassador and my friend. Rodney states, great presentation. Thanks for sharing. What would you suggest as a parent do to keep their kids from beginning to use?
I'm glad you asked that. So you can go to www.talkitoutnc.org and there is indeed a wealth of information on that particular website. There are tools that you can place in your toolbox, strategies that you can utilize to talk to, whether it's your child or other youth that you come in contact with. Every single adult somehow, some way comes in contact with some youth. So not just parents, but every adult is obligated. I encourage you emphatically to visit talkitoutnc.org and watch those videos. Look at and read some of those questions and answers and frequently asked questions, and put some of these tools in your toolbox so that you can begin this conversation with young people. It is of the utmost importance that we talk it out with one another, that we encourage these young people and help them to understand not just the dangerous impacts of alcohol and other substances, but the positive impacts of making positive and healthy choices in life. And that, the sky is not even a limit for you when you make healthy decisions and put your passions in a positive place.
All right, so we have Beth. She states, powerful message. Thank you for sharing. Stan says, thank you for sharing your story. As someone who has suffered from alcoholism, I know the pain you've been through. And then Jane says, thank you so much. My son passed away from fentanyl poisoning 6 years ago. You speak the truth.
Amen. Amen. My sincerest condolences for your loss. I also want to let people know that there are actually two recovery high schools in North Carolina. I'm on the board of directors of the Emerald School of Excellence, which is the very first recovery high school in the state of North Carolina, down in Charlotte. And these options weren't available when I was a youth, but now they are, and we need to do everything that we can to support them. The second recovery high school is Wake Monarch Academy, right here in Raleigh, North Carolina. So you can visit the websites of these particular schools and help contribute and support in whatever manner that you're able to make sure that there's options for young people. Walking through recovery from substance use disorder, surrounded by a peer group that is continuing to use and influence you in a negative manner, can be extremely difficult. So a recovery high school can be the difference between life and death for the young people. So, we of course want to honor the memory of those that did not make it. But at the same time, we want to make sure that there's supports in place to help that not happen again, help it not happen so often. These young people deserve our best. So let's give it to them.
We've got one more comment from Stacy. She says, thank you for being transparent and thank you for fighting to be better for yourself and for the community. But thank you most for being a survivor. You have truly turned past pain into positive.
Thank you.
It looks like that's all of the questions that we have. If anyone wants to raise their hand to speak with Kurtis, please feel free to do so or put any other questions in the chat box and we can answer them.
I guess that means I was.
We might have one more. Let's see here. It's from Crystal. She says, thank you for sharing your wonderful story, Kurtis. As a former dependent of an alcoholic, I wish my ex could have been that strong for our children, now adults. It looks like that is all of the questions that we have and comments that we have, Kurtis.
All right. Well, I just want to thank you again for joining with me on this Talk It Out Tuesday. Again, thank you, Heather and Berna and Stacy and Jeff and the entire group over there at ABC Commission that helped support this commitment. That's what I consider this as is a commitment, not just the campaign. Talk It Out NC is one of the most important things that I do in my life, because if I can help a young person avoid the pitfalls of substance use, then you know, I'm not only impacting that young person, I'm impacting their entire family. This is a disease of the family, and preventing that disease from ever taking place is my life's goal. You know, and so anything and everything that we can do to aid in your process and in your journey, that's what I'm here for. Again, I'm sincerely proud to be an ambassador for the Talk It Out NC campaign. Thank you again.